Okay, perfect. So, Jigesh, looks like it's recording. And before I ask any questions and before I start this conversation, thank you so much for joining and thank you so much for being a part of this. And thank you so much for
Mhm.
helping others in a way which is still possible.
Mhm.
So, I'm not sure how many people will reach out to you after this call, but they might, at least for a LinkedIn connections. But otherwise, I'm not sure of. So, just to
Mhm.
let others know, whosoever is watching this, Jigesh is a friend of mine from undergrad. And as far as I remember, Jigesh was the first person whom I met during my first day of my undergraduate degree. And I was very bad at remembering names, so I still remember I wrote his name on my notebook. But yeah, this Jigesh was the one of the very, very first persons whom I talked to during my
Mhm.
undergrad. So, and
Mhm.
now I think it's about to be, that's what I was having this conversation about Jigesh earlier. It's about to be 10 years since we started that duration, that timeline. It was 2015. And just to make others aware, I'll give a brief introduction from my side about Jigesh before I ask Jigesh to. So me and Jigesh have been friends since 2015. As I said, we kind of met on the first day. And we did our undergrad from the same college, same department, same class. So, and Jigesh is a really good player at chess. I'm not sure if he plays these days or not, but he used to. But yeah, that's kind of a summary. And I would not talk about his master's as of from my side and his job because that's what Jigesh is here for. So that's a quick brief from my side about Jigesh. So Jigesh, if you want to do a quick brief introduction from your side to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Firstly, thank you so much, Shubham, for having me in your platform. Like, I'm super excited to help you in this journey where you want to help other students who want to be part of this journey in the future. So, talking about myself, hello everyone. My name is Jigesh. I am born and brought up in Mumbai. I did my undergrad in electronics and telecommunication, as Shubham mentioned. From Mumbai University. So that's where I met Shubham. And after graduating and doing my bachelor's, I decided to come to US in the year 2021. And I came to US. I did my master's in engineering management from Northeastern University in Boston. After 2.5 years, currently, after graduating, I'm working as a product manager at a company called as ID Plans, currently based in Tampa, Florida. So that's like my quick overview of about my professional journey so far. If I'm not working, you will see me traveling or going to a new restaurant because I'm a big time foodie. So that's a bit about myself.
Well, that's really amazing. Thanks, Jigesh, for that introduction. And now I'll straight away move to the second gear, which is my question more with regards to your internship. So before I hear your journey about your internship interview and experience, if we can talk about how that journey was of landing an interview, including I'm not aware of that specific situation. So was it you found a co-op after you found your internship, or was your like internship got converted into co-op? So if these two questions would
Mhm.
be my major questions, if you can delve a bit more into these details.
Yeah, absolutely. So I quickly want to talk about what exactly a co-op is versus an internship. So I landed a co-op directly. So I worked at a company called as Evelo Biosciences in Boston as a business analyst. So it was a co-op. So it was a 6.5 month co-op. Now talking about the difference between a co-op and an internship. So you can consider co-op like an extended version of an internship. Usually internship lasts for like 3 to 4 months, and they're called as like summer internship or winter internship. Whereas co-op is more or less it's like from 6 months to 9 months. So it's like an extended version of internship. So it gives you more exposure to the practical world and the real world in the United States. It helps you build your profile in a way where you want to be. Um, so I would say I started as a business analyst co-op, but when I came to US, I wanted to be a product manager. I knew when I graduate, I want to be in the product management world. So I started building my profile because I came straight from the college. I had never had a lot of experience back in India. So I knew I had to build my profile in a certain way to be a product manager once I graduate. So during that journey, while I was looking for my co-op, I saw this interesting role as a business analyst. And Shubham, as you also know, that business analyst is kind of more or less a little bit related to product management because you do a lot of stakeholder management and, user interviews and stuff like that. So I decided to give it a shot because it's going to help me build my profile later on once I graduate. So that was like my mindset behind getting into business analyst core uh, from Northeastern.
Perfect. Perfect. So, Jigesh, I think I'll try to kind of deviate from the same conversation because of one of the inputs that I heard from you is more with regards to the co-op piece. So so now let's say if I'm like a 20, 21, 22-year old person trying to look for colleges, let's say in
Mm-hmm.
US specifically, would you prefer joining a college which offers co-op? So Duke didn't used to. I think now Duke is offering co-op. It wasn't there earlier. So one, were you already aware of Northeastern provides you co-op? And two, would you
Mm-hmm.
suggest somebody else to get into those kind of colleges? Why am I asking is that because once sometimes people have their internship done, the main question is, do I continue finding a co-op or do I start finding a full-time? So if you can share your thoughts on that.
Absolutely. That's a great question, Shubham. So honestly, the reason why I came to Northeastern was because of the co-op program. So it really depends on where you are right now. So since I came to US and I never really had a lot of experience, it was very important for me to gain a little bit of experience before I look for a full-time role. So in my case, it was slightly different, but it depends on where you are and what sort of experience do you have, and then based on that you can decide if you really want to get into a university that offers co-op or you directly want to look for a full-time. In my case, I wanted to have a co-op. That's why I chose Northeastern, because I had admits from other universities, but all of them were offering internship and nobody was offering a co-op, and that's why I chose Northeastern. So that was like my strategy behind landing a full-time job, where I wanted to get some real experience in United States before I step my shoes into the full-time role.
Perfect. Perfect. Thanks, Jigesh. And now, Jigesh, if you can talk about a bit more about how was your experience in finding an internship while you were parallelly, I'm sure you will, as I know from your
Mhm.
LinkedIn profile, you were parallelly working part-time at the university as well. And I'm sure you
Mhm.
would be doing other activities. And a quick blurb upon, I think you were a part of the Aspiring Product Managers Club at Northeastern University. Again, I have kind of your LinkedIn open, so that's why I remember that. So if you want to talk about how you were parallelly handling that and how difficult was it and like is it something that everybody does or is it something that only if you're like really want to do it that's why you should do it. Like any thoughts on those pieces of it as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, it's very important to set the right expectation. And being honest, when I started looking for my internship or for my co-op, it was difficult because that was the COVID era, and a lot of companies were doing mass layoffs and stuff like that. So the market was really difficult. So finding a co-op or an internship at that point of time was tricky. So I had a lot of rejections. I had to do a lot of applications in order to get one, but then I was lucky enough to find one because it was Boston based. And then I had like two rounds of interview. And talking about doing other things parallelly, so I really want to tell you why I was doing it. So as I said, when I came to US, I knew I wanted to be a product manager, right? So I started talking to a lot of people. I started networking the day I landed in US. And then I had like this cheat sheet where I knew, okay, to be a product manager, these are the skill sets that you need. And then I listed down my skill set, like right next to it to see, okay, where the gap is, because I wanted to bridge the gap once I graduate. And I only had like 2.5 years to bridge the gap, right? So when I saw it, I knew like there are so many things I still need to do in order to be a product manager. So I started looking for ways to do it. One is doing a co-op. The next could be, maybe you can start doing an on-campus job, or you can look for an on-campus job, which is slightly, it's going to help you bend yourself to be a product manager. And parallelly, as I said, Aspiring Product Management Club is all about product management. So that was another thing that I really wanted to do to, bridge that gap. So it was all about bridging the gap. It was all about pushing yourself to a limit where you know you have to do all of this in order to stand a chance to be a product manager. So that was the reason why I was doing all three of them parallelly. And as I said, I would be honest, it was difficult, but it was worth doing because after my graduation, I became a product manager. So if I look at that journey, if I look at all of that struggle and hard work, I feel like it was important. And I was very happy that I was able to do that. So that was the reason why I was doing all three parallelly.
Perfect. No, that's really amazing. And it's good to hear an honest opinion because I just want others to also understand that, it's not a bed of roses kind of a journey. I'm sure there would be a lot of thorns as well in parallel. I'm sure everybody can do it eventually, but I'm more or less talking
Hmm.
about while you are involved in that situation, like at present. So just wanted to make it that clear.
Hmm.
Now, Jigesh, moving on to the questions or the interview rounds specifically for your internship, if you can talk a bit more about that, like how many rounds
Hmm.
were there, including, let's say, the initial HR or, the screening round, and then what kind
Hmm.
of questions were there asked, and what were their expectations of you, especially while we're talking
Hmm.
about co-op, because I think you're the first person whom I'm talking to on this channel, which is, who was a part of a co-op program, like rather than an internship program. So are there like more expectations because they're gonna have you for like 6 months, which is a longer time than an internship? Maybe in internship they have
Hmm.
less expectations from an individual because it's just 3 months. So something on that lines.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had like two rounds of interview. One was with my manager, and the second one was well, like with an HR. So the HR round was pretty straightforward. It was more or less related to behavioral sort of questions. And when it comes to talking to the manager, since it was a business analyst role, and they had like a specific project that they wanted me to work on, so those questions were around that. It was more or less like talking. Are you able to talk to stakeholders? Can you get things done and stuff like that? Because I was there for 6 months and they really wanted to execute a project. So I feel like the round was more or less tailored to my resume and my capability of getting things done. So it was again kind of behavioral, but it was more focused on a specific part of the project that I had to implement and execute over a period of 6 months. So I had like two rounds of interview with them, and it lasted for like around a month. And then I got the offer in a month from Avelo Biosciences.
Nice, that's really amazing. Now, shifting to the third gear, talking about the next conversation. So after your co-op was completed, I want to talk more about were you like that's an initial question because before I move to the full time. So now that you had done or you already had experience, as a business analyst role, and you already mentioned you wanted to do a product management role, but you also mentioned about how the market was. So, were you parallelly applying to business analyst and product management roles, or were you very much focused to just applying to product management roles? Now, what would the third question? I know it's too many questions at once, but the similar question on the third piece would be, what would you mention it to somebody or give an advice if you had to should they cast a wider net in terms of the application, especially talking about the
Hmm.
market, or if you're aware that this is where you want to be in, eventually you'll get in. It's all about time. So what's your preference and how was your experience for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my case, I was only looking at the product management role, I would say. So I was not looking at business analyst, data analyst, project management, program management, nothing of that sort. It was purely product management. Because as I said, when I came to US, I wanted to be a product manager. So I was laser focused on a product management domain in general. So I kept working and I kept pushing myself in order to get into that domain. So I never sidetrack myself with other roles. But talking about if everybody should be doing this, again, it depends on what exactly you want to do. Once you graduate from your university where you are studying, it all depends on what you want in the end. In my case, since it was laser focused on being a product manager, I kept pushing myself in one. I would say like I only had a plan A. There was no plan B in general. But I've seen a lot of people having plan A, plan B, and then even plan C. If things don't work out, they can keep switching between the things. And I feel it's absolutely fine if you're doing that, because the reason why I did my co-op as a business analyst, because I had a plan B. Like plan A was okay, getting a product management internship, but that didn't land well. So I decided to have a plan B, which is getting a business analyst and then switching to being a product manager during my full time. So it's absolutely fine if you have a plan B for your full time, and then you can later on switch to being a product manager, maybe in the same company or in a different company. So it all depends on the strategy, on how you want to execute. But having plan A and B is absolutely fine. I have a lot of friends who had plan B, plan C, and right now they're working as a product manager, but they started working as something else, and then later on they made a switch. So I feel either or both the approaches are fine. It's just that you need to weigh down the pros and cons. If you only have plan A, then you need to look at the cons as well. And if you have plan A and B, then you also need to look at the cons. So you just have to weigh your pros and cons in a way, and then just tailor your strategy. And then eventually you would end up where you have to be. So I would say that's my advice. It's absolutely fine to have multiple plans. There's no harm in doing that. But in my case, I only had that. I only had one approach.
Got it. Got it. I mean, that's a tough call, actually. Because especially while I was looking at my experience in my time, I think I had to apply for other roles as well. I wasn't sure if we would land. I mean, but that's how sometimes the market is. I feel like, you just have to.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good to hear that you were very laser focused on your approach and you just wanted to follow your approach to land the job that you wanted to. Perfect. That's
Hmm.
amazing. Now, Jigesh, also a bit more about product management as such. Why am I asking is this that you wanted to become a product manager? And before I get to the main question, which is more with regards to how was your full-time job experience and how you landed the job, but I just wanted to take a step back and ask this question because you already had that business analyst experience, and did it ever kind of happen in any interview? I might be wrong, but did it happen in any kind of interview that you were kind of getting business analyst interviews, or they were more focused to, because you already have experience in that, why not continue that journey or something like that? And was it like how were you able to relate uh, those business analyst pointers to product management so that if there's an individual who's trying to move from a business analyst role to a product management role, so what are the
Hmm.
bridges that they can use, as I'm sure you kind of
Hmm.
did. So if you can talk a bit more on
Hmm.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, like when I came to US, I had this cheat list where I knew, okay, these are like the major skill sets that you need in order to be a product manager, right? And again, it could vary based on what type of industry you want to step in, what type of role it is. Like absolutely the list could change, but I had like a broader list of, okay, these are the things that I need to have, like a basic foundation I need to have. So when I was doing my co-op as a business analyst, something my co-op was very much focused on was like stakeholder management because they had this big project that they want to internally roll out. So I had to talk to a lot of stakeholders internally in order to get it done. So a couple of things that I kind of relate with my business analyst experience to the product management experience is more like stakeholder management. One, second is leading the project end to end. Like I started as a business analyst, I got the introduction, and the second day I was on the project. So it's like getting things done. So that is very important as a product manager that you need to know how to get things done. So I relate that as well. Third aspect was a more of a technical aspect. Since the project was related to data, I was able to, kind of relate my tech experience around data management really well in product management as well. Because as a product manager, you do need to understand tech as well because you work with a lot of engineers at the same time, right? And the fourth aspect that I got from my business analyst experience was doing some user interviews. Since I had to talk to a lot of stakeholders, I had to internally talk to them to understand their problem. Like I had to define the problem space before stepping into the solution phase, right? There's something, as you know, Shubham, when you are a product manager, that this is something really important as a product manager that you need to know how to define problem space really well. So I think like that experience also gave me a bit of exposure towards user interview, defining problem space, and I was very well able to relate that experience with my product management journey.
Perfect. That's really amazing, Diyesh. Wow. That's nice to hear because I want there could be a possibility some people are from a big, because I've heard a lot of people coming from a business analyst experience trying to get into product management. So it kind of definitely
Hmm.
helps. Now, switching on to the main question is how was your full-time experience journey? in terms of the applications and the things that we are doing in parallel, and how many applications. If I'm not sure if you'll be remembering that or not exactly, but somewhere around the ballpark numbers. And then
Hmm.
let's dive eventually to the, kind of interviews that were there for your full time.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was difficult since I was laser focused on getting into product management. I had limited choices. So, and I got a lot of rejections. I don't remember the number of applications, but it was obviously more than 500 to close to maybe 1,000. But I don't remember the number on top of my head. But I did a lot of applications. I had to go through a lot of struggle since I always had a plan A and I was sticking to plan A. I faced a lot of rejections as well. Um, but at the same time, I was also preparing myself. Like, if I get an interview or if I have an interview lined up, I know how to crack it down. So there are two things when I look at getting into product management domain. I feel like one is obviously looking for a job, and the second is preparing for an interview, because preparing for a product management interview could itself be its whole universe. Like, there are so many things that you need to do side by side. So while I was applying, I was also making sure that whenever I get an interview, I know how to crack it down. So it was like a two-way approach, applying and then preparing for the future interview that's going to come forward. So that was my strategy. As I said, I would be honest, it was not easy, but in the end, if you really wanted to do it, you will do it. So that was the approach that I had.
Perfect. So, Jigesh, you mentioned one point, talking about specifically that preparing for the interviews. So, I, as an individual, kind of had a different approach because I thought, let's focus on
Hmm.
getting an interview first, and then we'll think of, once we have that interview, and then we'll think of. So, how are you able to cope up, like, parallelly learning about how to crack those interviews, and in parallel on the other side applying for those job roles? So was it
Hmm.
for some time you felt like, let me just focus completely on finding a job, and
Hmm.
then once I have an, because for me it was the only motivating factor for me was, if I have an interview, I'll study for that. It's like a engineering mindset. We kind of, before the call, we
Yeah.
talked about something in regards to that.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe that's not something to have. It's not a right approach. But some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so again, it depends on what is your strategy. As I said, I only had a plan A, and I know that, okay, if I want to be a product manager, at some point of time, I'm going to get an interview. And once I get
Mm.
an interview, I should be in a position to crack it because I don't have a plan B. If I'm not able to do that, I am back to square one, which is going forward with plan A, right? So I would say, like, I used to spend like 60% of my time applying and, networking, talking to people and trying to understand the market and stuff like that. And the remaining 40% was focused on making sure that, I'm ready for an interview, even without having an interview. So that was like a two-way approach that I had. And it was all because of just having a plan A.
Nice, nice, perfect. Now, if you can help us talk about more with regards to, uh, what kind of questions were asked during that full-time interview at IDP, and what were their expectations, and how many rounds were there? If you can get into a bit more detail, so that people can. I'm not. I'm sure that the questions depend on case by case basis, and they come as the interviewee and interviewer talk. But how was that specific experience, if you can like explain it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had like four rounds of interview. So those four interviews were more or less focused on, one was like the product design aspect, like how do you define the problem space and how do you come up with a solution. So that was one, like more of a product design side. The second one was like more related to strategy, uh, more or less like a product strategy. And then there was like a behavioral round that I had where they wanted to understand me as a person. And then I had an interview with the team, so it was more or less like around team building and what the team was expecting out of me. So like everybody got a chance to talk to me in that round, and they were trying to grasp, okay, is Jigesh the right fit for this team or not? So I had like four rounds, but it was more or less focused around strategy, product design, behavioral, and team building and the team culture in general.
Perfect. And were all these interviews like one-on-one interviews, or there was a case where there was a panel that was sitting in front of you? during that interview?
Yeah, so I had like three one-on-one interviews, and then the fourth interview that I had was with a panel. So it was a team that I'm currently working with. So that was the team that took my interview. So yeah, there was one panel and three one-on-ones.
Perfect. I'm 100% sure it's very difficult to remember the questions that were asked during that, let's say strategy or product design questions. But if 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 in case any question that you remember at the top of your mind, maybe for the product design ones or maybe for the product strategy
Mm-hmm.
ones, so that I want,
Mm-hmm.
like, if somebody's preparing for that specific roles or similar roles, what kind of question they might expect, or if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, so I remember the product design one. So it was like a broader question. So it was more or less like, okay, let's say you're a product manager and you are designing an internal tool, right? And you have to build an internal tool, like a dashboard for your leadership team. How would you do that? So it's that high level, and then as you know, when you get into product design, you need to ask a lot of questions. You need to narrow it down to the exact what sort of visual dashboard that you're talking about. Is it even a dashboard or is it a software and stuff like that? So it was that broad. Like design a product for your leadership team. That's it.
Wow. Wow, that's nice to hear because a lot of times people are mistaken that when a question is asked, you just start, try to answer it. That's how my mindset
Exactly.
used to work earlier. So
Yeah.
nice, perfect. That's amazing. And I think these were more or less the questions that I had that I really wanted to ask. Now, it's kind of weird also nearing to the end of our interview time as well. So I'll try to squeeze in
Hmm.
one more question additionally based on the conversations that we had. I kind of have the answer for it, but I just want to hear it or, from a, end user standpoint as well who might be watching this video. So, while you were coming to US and you had to find a job, so you didn't have a lot of experience. One of the reasons why you preferred co-op than in just the internship. So, if there's again a 21-year-old self, or if you had to tell it to yourself, or any individual who's trying to get into, let's say, Northeastern again MEM program, so would you recommend as a one-liner asking them to stay back and gain more experience? Maybe in that particular domain or maybe in a different domain or something on those lines,
Hmm.
and then come on the US soil while you're trying to find an internship or a co-op or a full time, or it's
Hmm.
all about how you are able to network and strategize. If you can do that early on, is that what you prefer? So I know sometimes it's always like grass is always greener on the other side, but sometimes people
Yeah.
prefer the approach that they took is to give a reason to follow the same approach for others as well. So your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like having a bit of experience before coming to United States definitely helps you a lot, because it gives you a lot of exposure on you can set the expectation right. Like and you can set up the expectation right with yourself, like, okay, what I am getting into. So I feel like having a little bit of experience back in your home country would definitely help you uh, before you come to US, or if you want to get into the product management world. The second piece of advice, like there are two advices that I want to give you. One was the one that I just spoke. The second one is if you want to get into the product management domain as such, please do your research. Like try to understand, okay, what exactly product management is. Like I have seen people chasing job titles and not even reading job descriptions. There are times when, let's say, growth manager, if you look at a job description of a growth manager, it's more or less similar to product management. So just because you don't see a word product in the job title doesn't mean you are not in the product management domain. So that's like my second advice that I want to give you. Don't chase the title of a product manager, chase the job description of a product management. So those are like my two advices.
Perfect. That's it, I think, Jayesh. Thanks for ending with a nice note towards the end. Appreciate it. So yeah, thank you so much
Hmm.
for joining this, and thank you so much for being a part of this. I really appreciate, you speaking a lot about your experience, be it internship, your job search, and anything else that we talked about in between. So yeah, thanks again.
Absolutely. Yep. Thank you so much, Shivam. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'll let this stop.